And welcome back to Miniature Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from this time Tacoma, Washington. Home of I don't know because I didn't do enough prep for the show. As always, I'm your host for the evening, Daniel Doc Gentry, and with me as one of our gurus, Woody, with Miniature Dragon Comics. Hey, Woody.
Hi, and Tacoma is famous for stinky paper mills.
Stinky paper mills.
Yes.
Okay. Alex is running the booth upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much time they got, but if you want to try to run down here and catch, it's booth 512. And today we're going to be talking Star Wars Omnibus Infinities 1.
Yes.
That is a mouthful, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah. You know, I'm definitely messing with you with that choice.
See if I can make it through that?
Yeah. Well, were you just say Star Wars Infinities?
No, that's why Alex didn't read it right away.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah, we're doing a different setup today. I get to speak into.
So there are a couple people in the room. So hi, two people. We run on a matrix of judging comic books by 3 different matrices. That'll be art, what it is, the kind of art you'll see when we go through that, the storyline, and of course the lettering of the comic book, which is usually that domain.
Yes.
But let's get started. A little history for us, Woody.
Yes. Okay. So recently, with the acquisition of Lucasfilm by Disney, Marvel Comics has reacquired the license to Star Wars, producing an entire new continuity of books. But prior to that, we had Dark Horse Comics producing some really excellent books. And the one we're talking about today is Star Wars Infinities, and it was basically a series of what-if stories. And the first one, which we'll be talking about, is basically what if Luke failed to one that they did was basically what if the Wampa nailed Luke and Han couldn't rescue him. And then the third one they did was what if they failed to rescue Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt. And these are some really fun stories because they basically unravel the mythology and take it in a fun new direction. And there's actually a fourth one that we'll talk about in a future show, where what if George Lucas's original script got made. Which is a really interesting story, I will say.
And we keep talking about that. Okay,
Yes.
So since Alex isn't here,
Yeah.
you want me to go first? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so reading the comic book, I've noticed a couple of things. I know we disagree on this, but I love the art of this, and I know that some of the stuff is off in it because we've had this conversation.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that.
But just because the art was off doesn't make the overall unique. So one of the big things that stands out for me, and I'm sorry we don't have the pictures flowing today. It was just a last minute setup because we're doing it live here. We're trying something new.
Yeah.
The scenes where they're flying, when they have everything over Coruscant.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about that.
Is those kind of things, and the art is extreme. It is a very unique art style, and I will admit that the faces are not all just right dressed. They don't all look like the same face all the time, but we can get to that too.
Yeah, it's tough.
The lettering in this, they just went for what it looked like, just the casual lettering, nothing crazy. It was perfect for what it was with everything else that was going on because there's a lot in the background. Mm-hmm. I don't think if they would have did anything more extreme with the lettering, it would have done anything great for the comic book.
Well, they went very basic. I mean, it was just they basically hired a guy who knew what he was doing, did a competent job, and told the story. The art is interesting in this book because it's always tricky. Any comic book, whether you do an adaptation, where you have to draw a person who looks like draw a character who looks like an actual person. It's always very iffy. Like with these kinds of what if kind of books, they usually don't pick A-list talent. They definitely don't hit Marvel. And in this case, it's like there'll be a page where it looks exactly like Luke or Han, and the next page is like, what is that? what am I looking at? And then you mentioned Coruscant. That's one of the things that threw me off years ago when I first found this book. When I think I found it in a Barnes and Noble, and I was flipping through the graphic novel. I swore that they had built the second Death Star, and that was the size of a planet. So it's like you have the Death Star, and then the even bigger one. And all it is like I'm not even sure the artist knew what he was doing when he drew this thing, because I think he might have thought that Coruscant was another Death Star. Because when you draw Coruscant, it literally looks just like the Death Star, only bigger.
But to be fair,
yeah.
Coruscant is a planet that has levels of cities upon cities upon cities that are built on it, and it would not have a look of a regular planet. It would almost look Death Star-y because of how much technological stuff is on it.
I mean, it's fair, but I mean, still, it threw me off when I first found this book. But it is an interesting story because it basically opens up with the assault on the Death Star, And then, as you may see, if you could see my demo, I drew on the whiteboard behind us. The basic setup is that Luke, he's going in for the trench run, launches off the torpedo, but the Force is not with him because it blows up halfway down. And it causes a lot of damage to the Death Star, but does not actually destroy it. And basically what happens is that they fail to blow up Yavin. The rebels have time to escape and basically all get captured. And so from there, things just get crazy. Luke and Han take off. Luke still ends up on Dagobah, trains to be a Jedi, but Leia ends up basically being forced to serve the Empire. And it definitely changes things towards the end.
Which brings us to the third Matrix, which would be the storyline.
Yes.
So there's a lot of unique things that happen in the storyline, and I'm not saying I dislike it. So I just want to pick it apart. All the way up to where I would say the end is, the final confrontation. Mm-hmm. Up to that point, great.
Yeah.
I love it. They accounted for if it exploded in an exhaust tube, it would cause problems to the Death Star itself.
Right.
I think that Grand Moff Tarkin would have said, fire it anyway.
Yeah.
We don't need the whole thing. I think all of that was really well thought of. It was definitely a duration of things that should happen.
Right.
Leia getting caught and that twist of it was really cool. I enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. And the storyline itself kept me all the way through, even though I've seen the movies probably more than 1,000 times.
Got me beat.
Oh, it is. It is. That's my wife. But it's the very end that throws me off, and it's nothing like the story had its turn, and it had this unique ending, but the ending came too fast.
Yeah, well, I kind of had a similar feeling because, this happens. I've seen this happen in other what if kind of stories where they're rolling along and they're on a deadline, right? So it's not like you have time to really develop a story. Like when I write a comic, I like to take months and months and sometimes years to write the story if I can, and some of them I have, and I think it helps a lot. But when you're on a deadline, you're working for a company, they're like, oh, we need the story in 6 weeks. You don't always have enough time to go back over it, and sometimes the stories, the ending gets kind of rushed because you only these are basically 4-issue minis, and once it's done, it's got to be done. You can't go over. And at the point where they basically, the ending, at the risk of spoiling it, is very similar to the end of Return of the Jedi. And the confrontation with the Emperor and trying to turning Vader and all these things that still happen here, but in a different sequence. And it definitely feels like it needed a 5th issue because Vader's involvement wasn't as in-depthly developed as it would have been in Return of the Jedi. With the relationship, because he now has a chance to develop the relationship with Leia, not Luke, and never had those encounters with Luke Skywalker. And so, but you don't really see as much of it.
No, and I agree with that. But in the original 3 movies, it was built up over time.
Yeah.
So you could follow the storyline and then watch it happen. Mm-hmm. Where this one felt like I said, everything at the last moment.
Yeah. Just
bam. And you had everything right in your face. But that was it for the story that I didn't like. The rest of the story I thought was great, well thought out. I don't know the turnaround time. This is a Marvel comic. So, I'm guessing, these guys do these.
The Dark Horse.
This one?
Yeah.
This one's Marvel.
Well, it's Marvel has the license to reprint them.
Okay.
But it was originally made by Dark Horse Comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, I was thinking about the turnaround time.
Yeah.
So when you think of all these things and you see these turnaround times, these comic books get put out every month. And we've talked about this before. These big end comic book guys that are putting out a lot of comic books, of course, sometimes their story or the art or something is going to fail in it because of the very limited time they have to put it out.
Yeah, I think typically from beginning to end, you have 2 months, to get the thing done.
Yeah, so, and that might be stretching it. Like I said, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
The story itself in this, I don't think they had a rushed project, but it seems like I feel like the end was changed because there's no way you would have had that competent of writing and then had this hurry up feel. Feels like a lot of gaslight Gaslight by or Gotham by
Gotham
Gaslight.
Gaslight. Well, Superman speeding bullets was actually probably the most guilty of that, because it was what if Superman became Batman? He had been found by the by the Waynes instead, and like the ending is just boom, suddenly you're at the end, But what got me was actually the ending, because it's like, again, I don't want to ruin the ending because this is a really fun story. You should go read it, but there's literally a scorched earth ending to this thing, where like the way the Death Star, because Yoda basically is the one that resolves the plot at the end, and something that happens with him and the Death Star essentially ends the Empire, and it's not what you think it would be.
When I say it that way, and it's just like, how can, like, the amount of devastation that results from the ending of the story, it's like, how could he stay on the, like, how could a Jedi Master make a decision that ends the lives of millions of people? And granted, it saves the galaxy. Like, objectively, it's a correct decision because, like, using the power of the Death Star to end the Empire and definitively end it and bring freedom to the galaxy, I mean, like, in the balance of everything, if trillions of lives, it does work. But yet, at the same time, it doesn't really fit what's been set up in the mythology of this universe. Like, that's to do a scorched earth policy to solve a problem. How can someone stay on the light side when they do that?
Well, Yoda's not always on the light side. So that's been accepted into its old canon and accepted into the new canon already, which is his life is always about skirting. There was an event. They've never talked about it. Nobody has. And so Yoda was always right there about to cross over the edge. Yeah. It is why he never mastered the 7th level of lightsaber, because Mace Windu could. Yeah. But a lot of people couldn't, because it uses the power of your enemy's dark side abilities to fight them with it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Mace. Well, in the new continuity, the whole reason why Mace Windu's lightsaber is purple is because he does cross the line between the light and the dark, and as a result, you get the purple.
Yeah, the real story is he wanted to see himself in the fight.
Exactly, and he wanted a purple lightsaber. He's like, I want a purple lightsaber. It's like, okay, cool.
Right,
done.
So he could point out. It was specifically why he wanted the purple one. I thought it was a pretty good story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, overall, or not overall, but what do you think? Those three matrices.
Well, I really enjoyed this story. The art was very sketchy, but even though there's a little rushiness at the end, which I did notice too. I mean, I thought the story was just absolutely fun, and I really enjoyed it. And it just I would recommend it to anybody. I think it's cool. I mean, though we were talking with Abby, this girl we know, before we started the show, and she was just like, "You can't do that! Oh my God, that's horrible!" You can't. Just kind of freaking out at the prospect of some of these changes we were telling her about in the continuities of the story. But no, I mean, I loved it. I thought that story was a lot of fun, and I was super happy to get to read it, and I would recommend it to anyone. I think it's great.
So, but you mentioned the art, so let's give you the open floor for this.
Well, the artwork, again, like as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of 50-50. Because as I said, anytime that you're doing one of these licensed kind of books, you have to make the characters look like the real person. It's very tough. Like sometimes they nail it, sometimes they don't, and half the time it's just literally the only reason you knew who it was is because they were dressed properly.
Now that you say it like that, I kind of see, because when we were talking before the show, I didn't. Do you think that's? Remember, we've talked about this, being able to draw something you see in your head and draw something you see in real life, and that they are different. Do you think that could have been accounted for this?
I think it's a matter of the fact that these kinds of books rarely have A-list talent. The same thing happens with Marvel. Like, as I understand it, when they do their lower tier books are the ones they try out new people. And let's see if this guy has what it takes, see if he can keep a deadline, see how people like his stuff. And like we were looking at one of the books, I can't remember what they said, but they thought that like the guy was supposed to draw Lando and it looked like Bruce Willis or something, and it's just and so it's just or Marlon Brando or whatever. But it's just like I guarantee like these weren't top A-list professionals. These are okay. Well, we're on a budget. Who can we get? and maybe if the guy does a good job, he might get more work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you think? I mean, we've got time, so let's just expand.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first one is, what if the torpedoes exploded? They still make it into the exhaust port,
but
they explode before the core.
Yeah.
So the second one was that's A New Hope.
Yeah, so New Hope. Then the second one, this one was fun too, was what if Luke dies on Hoth? So in the setup of the second one, and these are all, there's a whole omnibus you can download on Comixology, and of course you can find it in the bookstore too. But yeah, and so in they had the whole beginning, it was all the same, but in this one, Han's Tauntaun died earlier, and he had to go out on foot, and he couldn't get Luke back to basically warm him up. So Luke didn't make it, and that completely changed everything, because Luke does not get to go to Dagobah. And that was actually kind of fun, because Luke was spouting off the nonsense about, I got to go to Dagobah, and Han thought he was being told to go to Dagobah, and in this version, Han thought he was supposed to become a Jedi, which I thought that was pretty fun. It clearly indicates you're in a different universe.
I was rooting for it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought that would be a fun story.
Yeah, and in the third one, which I didn't get to read the ending of it, so I don't know how it turns out. But in the third one that they did, it's basically what if they fail to rescue Han Solo.
So let's get through the second one, because the art is unique in this one.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first one, but
Okay.
for the same reason. I have very symmetrical lines, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And seriously, I was blown away. I wish I could have the pictures on here, because I was really blown away by the Death Star hovering the planet with all those different size Star Destroyers, from Super on down, and it was like,
That was the scene in the New Hope one.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That one blew me out of the water.
Yeah, like they were having like the 10th anniversary of peace or something like that.
Yeah, so you have that many straight lines and you're moving them slightly, like you would go crazy. And there's a bunch of them. And I would say I would own the comic book for that picture alone, let alone the rest of it. The second one wasn't that kind of style, but I still like the uniqueness of it.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like super detailed, but what it felt was like interpretation of details that already existed.
Yeah.
So
Well, there was actually an interesting point in that one that caught my attention. So, spoilers, I'm sure everybody sees this one coming. Leia gets to train with Yoda in the second one. And so one of the things so what oh yeah, great. Yeah, right. I got the mic in front of my face. So one of the things that's been talked about, like if you've ever watched Nerdist, they have a show called Because Science. And so this guy has basically taken and broken down the power level of the lightsaber if it's capable of drilling through a bulkhead on a ship. Now, I think that he's looking at a hard science, not considering that maybe it's the Force which is allowing him to drill through the thing. But if the thing is hot enough to cut through a bulkhead with a blast door, okay, that means that if it went through your body, you would explode instantly, right? And they never show it that way. It just burns you, right? But I thought it was interesting, this scene where Leia is messing with the lightsaber and then hits a monster with it and it explodes. And and Yoda's like, you still have yet to master, striking enemies that are made of more than 70% water. And I thought that was interesting because the writers of that story tried to inject some plausibility into the technology. And, I think Star Wars works best when it's a bit more magical and less well explained. But I thought that was a really fun touch, and I liked that they did that.
You kind of reminded me, and I don't mean to go back after we've done it, but there was two Dagobah. There was one with Luke, one with Leia.
Right.
Is the first book the one with Luke?
Yes.
Okay. Part of that I loved, I just want to be really clear on this, it was incredible, was Luke finishing his training.
Yeah.
At Dagobah.
Yeah, because he was there for like 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
He got to do the whole thing.
And I love that they determined he would be different, but he wouldn't be that different.
Yeah. Well, because in that one he kind of gave into his anger a little bit, which had not occurred normally in the movies. And so
right.
the idea being that, you've made the mistake, you're screwed with it, which I don't buy that. Nobody's damned because they've done one thing wrong. But that was actually it was an interesting point, because one of the things I liked about the second one was that, like, in the first one there was a definitive plot resolution, like, even though it was kind of rushed, it's like, okay, well, here's a setup, and boom, we see the ending, and it ends basically like the Star Wars trilogy. In the second one, we never see that. Like, the ending of the second one is kind of open-ended, but yet it works so well. You don't feel like you're burned on the thing, because like you don't necessarily have to see the ending, because you know what's going to happen.
And I agree, but in the Dagobah stuff, that's just why I brought this up, because this is what I want to get at, is watching Luke go back and succeed.
Yeah.
In the cave, and understanding the cave a little bit more. It's always been that mystery, and a lot of people have argued over it over time. And then watching Leia do it as well. But the Luke one, I like when he failed, he didn't see his own face, he saw Leia's face.
Yes, well, because Leia was in the thrall of the Empire. Yeah.
And then, succeeding was really cool just to watch this. And then Leia, it was like Yoda treated her differently.
Yeah. Well, because she was not as hot-headed as Luke. She didn't. She was.
Who said Nerf hurt her in the movies?
Well, and actually, I think it's an important point here to make sure that so each of these stories is a 4-issue miniseries, and they all were standalone. These aren't stories that connect. So, when we're talking about the Empire Strikes Back one, it doesn't immediately follow the first one. Like, these are all standalone stories. And then I really wish I'd been able to finish the third one. Had enough time, but getting ready for the show, I only had so many minutes available. But I don't really know how the third one ends exactly.
So this graphic novel is, we should explain, the one that we're doing, that we read, 277 pages.
Yeah.
And the panels are really put into the pages.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information. The third one is an awesome ending, and I've heard of this ending before. Somebody else has talked to me about this, which is...
Well, I actually know how it ends. I remember seeing the last page when I found the graphic novel or the trade in the in Barnes & Noble. I just don't remember how they get there. So.
Well, and I love that it's open-ended, too.
Yeah.
So, and I know this might be a little spoilery for everybody. If you don't want to hear this, go ahead and pause me right now, and I'll give you a wave when I'm done. But the premise of it is that Luke and Leia both save Darth Vader.
Right.
And then Darth Vader gets injured like he did, but they save him, and they bring him on a Millennium Falcon, which, by the way Han responds to that is great.
Yeah.
And then he shows up next in a white outfit, and they're going to go hunt the protect the galaxy again as the new Jedi Order, starting with these three.
Yeah, but I think wasn't it where Luke's kind of on the outs with the Republic because he's protecting his father? Wasn't that part of that as well?
Not this. It ends with him you see the white suit and then the end of the story. But so there's nothing really there, and I may just be forgetting stuff. It might be, but the important part of this is just the concept that these three could go, and this would be the start of the new Jedi Order. A Jedi who was actually trained when the New Republic had the Jedi. Luke Skywalker, if he puts his twist into it, and is no longer now the Grand Master as the books go on, the Legends now as they call them.
Right.
And then Leia as a fully trained Jedi is another incredible thing that I think a lot of people wanted to see, and they did really well by putting it into the comic book itself.
Yeah. Well, but, when I was reading through it, it was interesting seeing how they basically failed to rescue Han Solo at Jabba's palace. And then Boba Fett gets away with him, thinking, well, I'm going to get my payday somewhere else. And there's a scene where Leia's trying to nail him, and she's just so desperate, it ends up hitting the containment chamber. And it's just, it kind of implies that she killed him at that moment. But
he doesn't die. I want to be clear.
Okay.
He just can't come out of the carbonite now.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
It damages the ability to get out of the carbonite.
Interesting. And I actually thought that was an interesting touch where I think it was in the second one, they in the one that was based on Empire, when they capture Boba Fett, Lando ends up putting Boba Fett in carbonite and turns him into a desk. And that was amazing.
I thought that was great. I did.
That was so cool.
So we got about 5 minutes left. Okay. Let's go through. Give me your final thoughts on, the stuff that you read out of these three stories.
Yeah. Well, the main thing, the appeal of the What If series that Marvel has done for many years is basically it's okay, well, we have this thing that we did in one of our comic books. People loved it. Well, what if we did something different? And there have been a lot of really fun stories come out of that. And Star Wars is one of those things where we have this continuity, and now we got a new continuity. But you have your continuity, and they keep building on it. But they never really. There isn't really a lot of this, like the what if stuff, and to actually see those fun, hey, what if this happened? that's kind of a fun idea, and we kind of are doing that now, with the new continuity that Disney had. It's a big what if thing, but a couple of these were so fun. You almost want to see what that Star Wars universe would have been like. Like, what if Leia had then gone on to start a Jedi Order? Because it's just like some of these are fun ideas, and I'd actually would think it would be kind of neat if somebody wanted to do the Star Wars role playing game to use one of these as the basis for their campaign world. That would be a really fun idea, since we're technically an RPG as well podcast. But
I just bring it up from time to time. Man.
Yeah, Doc, you disappeared from my screen. Are we still good?
You're good.
It says Daniel has left the call.
I can hear you, but we're having issues right now.
It said you left the call. Are we still on?
We're good.
Okay, good. All right, and then so it's like they're really fun stuff. And I do think we should probably review the fourth one at some point soon, which was what if George Lucas's original script got made? You're gonna hate it, Doc. I swear. It's nothing like what you think it would be.
Yeah, it is what it is. So I guess my final thoughts is I enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah,
it is a very tough read.
Yeah.
I did it all at once, but I took time, set it aside when I saw it was 277 pages because I got a lot going on in my life and I wanted to make it happen. Mm-hmm. As for the other little things in the book, like I said, you can overlook them. And what I mean by that is, yes, you're right in the first one, the faces aren't all the same.
Yeah.
And in the last one, and if you guys are like me, it'll drive you nuts too with the great big noses and stuff. Yeah. But I mean, just honestly, it's hard to draw somebody else's stuff and put your own twist on things.
Yeah.
And maintain that. Now, these are three different artists, three different storytellers.
Well, I gotta say, after you had commented on that, with like you didn't like the third artist, and I remember at the beginning it looked really sharp because he could handle like Jabba's palace looked great, like some of these other like Boba Fett looked great. But then I look at the stormtroopers, it's like, did we hire the sumo wrestler stormtroopers? These guys kind of want to diet.
It reminded me of the Family Guy one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Aren't you too fat to be a stormtrooper? Well, why don't you stay and die, you stupid?
Well, I think the artist on the second one was probably the strongest artist.
I will admit it was really good.
Yeah.
But I will say that first one, just that lineup, and there's a lot of stuff, very awesome background stuff in the first one. I was just blown away by. I will admit that I think the second artist was way stronger than the other two. The other one had a good feel, but this didn't feel like the comic book to cut their teeth on.
Yeah,
is what it was. So I mean, do we give it a recommend it for people? I do. I absolutely do.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's an incredible story. It's really fun. And it was a lot of good times, and you just want to know what's coming next.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm totally giving this a 5 out of 5. Like I love the book. I mean, it's it's you basically getting, like, you buy this thing, you're getting 12 comic books in this omnibus. You are getting your money's worth out of it.
All right. So again, check us out. Right now, we're still up at miniaturedragon.squarespace.com. We're just having some technical issues with some of the companies that we deal with.
Yeah.
But we will get that taken care of soon. Read the comics, new comics coming out. If you go to the website, there's new comics on there. You may not have seen
absolutely.
if you've enjoyed other comics.
Well, check out our Twitter feed, because we're certainly updating the links to our Twitter, which I look up Cyber Symbiosis on Twitter, and you should find us easily enough.
Mm-hmm. Or I will have it linked into the one for this account, which is at MD Reviewcast. So,
yay.
Anyways, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.
Come see us at Emerald City Comic Con.
Oh yes, well,
booth 1812.
Spoilers.